appreciate that. So is anybody here that wants to share a testimony? Come on up. Do you have one, Andy? We'll give her a couple minutes here. And if anybody else wants to, please come forward if you would. That way I can kind of tell you how much time you got. So far we got, what's your name? Anna? Anna? I don't know how to pronounce it. You're from Ashland, Ohio. So share your testimony, and we got a couple more there to do it. Then we might have a couple more. We're probably going to try to close down by 8:30. That's including everybody.
It's a great privilege for me to stand here to share my testimony. Every believer, every child of God have a testimony. And the moment we share our testimony, God gives us more. I can't just start the testimony. Now let me start from the beginning. I will try to summarize. Before I got married as a young lady, from a Christian home, I gave my life to Christ as early as when I was 12. And I got baptized in 1989, October 21st. I gave my life in the year December 1987. After 2 years, I got baptized by immersion. And I grew up to finish my high school to go to a college. That's where, after graduation, I get to know John, my late husband. What am I trying to say for you people to get the story where I'm going? The year 2001, September 7, that was when the terrorists started the killing in Africa, Nigeria. And they started in my state, Plateau State. And that fateful day, I was preparing for my wedding, November 3rd, 2021. From my place of work, with my wedding card in my hand, I got to meet my fiancé then, John, to give him part of the card, and the crisis caught up with us in the city. No mobility. We have to trek miles for him and his friend to see me back home to my parents. And that night, God preserved us in the midst of the Muslims that were holding marches ready to kill. We were passing them as we walked through them. God saw us through till I get home. But in the midst of that, we got married November 3rd, 2021. November 3rd, 2001. After our marriage, God really helped us and gave us a vision. He gave my husband a vision. He's a pastor. In that vision, he started a ministry, and it didn't just come immediately. As the ministry started, it was growing stage by stage, one step after the other. But the ministry get to grow stronger the ministry get to go stronger when we grow in marriage. God bless us with like 3 children. In the year 2006, that was when the ministry got stronger in Africa. And this ministry is a non-governmental organization that we have to reach out to people, one, on reading culture. We have poor reading culture in Africa. God has blessed us with an organization that supports us to give us material that will go out there in the IDP where crises have affected people, to support them with books, to teach them how to read. And that was what was happening. And all this continued It gets to a year, 2021, that a pastor friend was kidnapped because all this civil unrest keep on growing from one state to the other. And that pastor friend was someone that my husband knew very well. He was kidnapped on the October 19, 2020. That was on my daughter's birthday. And when we got to know, they tried all to help that man. He couldn't avail. One night when we were sleeping, my husband just woke up from dream and said, I am dreaming. I saw Reverend Polycarp Zongo in my dream, telling me that if everyone forsake me, will you forsake me too? My husband said, you have to do all what is humanly possible for him to save the young man with the help of God. And which he started what to do, he did and got help. The man was released after 8 months of captivity. With other 9 people, there were 10 that were released on that fateful day. And the challenges keep on coming because, one, my husband is the outspoken type to the government, both state, local government, and the federal government. He don't care who you are, he tells you the truth. Because the killing of the Christians was on the high side. When the persecution keep on coming, the next thing is he wants the safety of his family first. Because without the safety of his family, he can continue the work which God have called him. And that was why the coming of America come up. And God grant us visa to a family friend that worked with the American embassy. We find ourselves we came through Washington, D.C., and we find ourselves in Maryland. That was 2021, September 9. For that, on arrival, my husband has a friend here in Ashland named by Manasseh Wakawa. On a prayer request, he gave that I have a friend with his family. This is what happened. He was here. Before you know, it became a burden in the heart of Pastor John and the church. We had Zoom meeting, and they said, oh, why can't we come over? We came over to Ashland, and when we arrived, we came for a visit like weekend. My husband said, we are not going back. This is the place. So he asked where we stay, that they can give us some time, not knowing that coming to Ashland will be a place that I will become a widow. While we are in Ashland, March last year, March 15, I was here. I lost my mom in Africa. 2 days before we left Africa, my family came and prayed with us and said, you are going for a far country? There is death. We don't know whether we will meet again. Little did I know that was the last day I saw my mom. My mom passed away March 15. That was a storm. After 8 months, John, my husband, just like Jock, one day he was just losing weight and losing weight. Nobody knows what is happening. Before you know, John was called to glory. John passed away on November 10, 2022. But in all this storm, I lift my hand and say, Father, I thank you. Because from the beginning, I was trained, knowing the word, I cast everything onto the Lord. Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of God. That was my stronghold, seeking him first, because I have no any other thing to do than seek his face. And this challenge keep on coming one after the other, but what I noticed in my life, not by my own making, but God has made it possible to see me standing strong. In the book of Psalm 121, I look unto the hill, from where does my help come from? From the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Standing here is not by myself. Being who I am is by the grace of God. And I thank God for the love I've experienced. In the storm, Jesus is with me. I remember in the storm with the disciples, Jesus was there sleeping with his disciples. The storm arose in the boat. But why? Jesus was there. with Jesus in my storm, I can just laugh at it because I know it is a walkover. And I thank God because God has seen me through, have seen my family through, have given me a family in solitary in the book of Psalm 68, verse 6. God has given me a family in solitary. Me having family here, I give God the glory. Family back home in Africa, we are praying because every day things are getting worse, especially just last February with the election, many are still being killed because of election. We need prayers. We give God the glory. This is the little summary of my story. I can't just narrate all because it's a lot. So I give God the glory.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, Andy, come on up. Thank you.
I'm encouraged tonight already. Lance, Adam, this testimony that just went before us. Book of Revelation says, "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the time and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuseth them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death." We're living in a day and age where we need to love our lives a little bit less. When I was 16 years old, I lived in a foreign country. I'd been there for a number of years. That's where I met my wife. We were schoolyard sweethearts. She was a Muslim, and I was a Christian. When I was 16, my father, we had a lot of disagreements. He was a Baptist preacher, a missionary. We didn't see things eye to eye and had a lot of disagreements. You know, some of you here would know me. You've known me for years. And I would wager that you never really heard me speak about my father or my childhood growing up. It's because I always stayed away from speaking about those things because I was always carrying a lot of pain inside of me. And I never could come around to speaking the truth and sharing openly about the things that happened to me while I was growing up. I had a lot of good things happen, and yet I had a lot of bad things happen. Because me and my father saw things differently, on the night of my 16th birthday, he threw a little party for me, invited some people over and had some ice cream and some cake. The next morning, he took me to the airport. He put me on an airplane and sent me with a letter in my pocket. The letter was to state that I had my mother's permission and my father's permission to join the U.S. military. My father failed to realize that I needed a high school diploma and or a GED along with that letter. So from overseas, he put me on an airplane and sent me to a city in West Virginia. It was Charleston, West Virginia. I had no money in my pocket. I got off the airplane and basically lived for a long time on the streets. I learned how to bury my feelings deep down inside of myself. I learned how to come up with the right answers, to say things, to get what I needed. I basically learned how to survive on the streets. And because I grew up in a church house, I always gravitated towards the church house because, well, God loves me. He never forsook me. And he was always there working, always. You know, I fell into a lot of relationships. I became a truck driver. I traveled all over the U.S. I did end up in the service. I ended up getting my GED. And with that letter, I entered the service when I was 17 instead of 18 or 16. And I had my 18th birthday in basic training. I spent a number of years serving our country overseas and came home and spent a number of years running up and down the road just trying to figure out who I am. You know, I never knew who I was. I was always looking for something, always searching. In and out of relationships. I was married for a number of years. It's possible to be married and in a relationship for over 20 years and never know anything about your spouse. Now, when I say that, I mean to have a personal conversation, to open up and share about what's inside of you. It's possible to be in those kind of relationships and never do that, especially if you learn how to hide who you are. So, I was in different relationships. Many different things happened to me in my life. I remember always having a desire to serve God and was blessed to be around some wonderful people in my life, people that were mentors to me. Appreciate you, Brother Joe. Met Brother Joe many years back. And if I didn't know Brother Joe, I would have never met one of my best friends sitting back here in the back, Jonathan Helmuth. I would be stuck somewhere. But people sold into my life. And not just Joe and Jonathan, but many others that are here tonight. Just sold into my life. You know, maybe it was just a word here and a word there. But, you know, I was a person that always had secrets. Now, 2 years ago, I had the privilege of being here, and I shared a message that I wrote down called Secrets Buried Alive Never Die. And when you take secrets and you bury them down inside of you, they don't go away. They're just waiting to bubble up and come to the surface. Back in 2013, I went astray and basically just hit rock bottom eventually. Wandered the streets, worked until my health was gone. I had Parkinson's. I was driving a truck, and then they took my license away from me. And I had several things that the doctors diagnosed with me, or diagnosed upon me. In 2019, or 2018 was the last time I had driven. They had told me I couldn't even drive my personal vehicle anymore. So I spent a year and a half inside a house that was falling apart, just waiting to die. I was cumbered down with Parkinson's and a number of other things, and I was living with shame and regret. At that point in my life, brother, I had a lot of regrets. And I thought if I could go back and do things different, I would. But I didn't know how to get out of the place that I was. I was stuck. And then in October of 2019, after being inside of the house on my bed for over 12 months and just waiting to die, my sister came to my house, and I hadn't seen her in years. And she knocked on the door and couldn't get in because I was basically bedridden. And she broke into the house, came in and got me up off the bed, took me in the shower and got me cleaned up, and told me that our father was on his deathbed. And she took me to the hospital to speak with my father. While I was at the hospital, my father had the nurse pull up a chair, and then everybody else left the room except for me and him, and they closed the door. And he began to speak to me and apologize to me for a lot of things that happened in our lives. And I sensed that night that my father was being honest with me. I'm in my 50s. So since I was 16, I had issues with my father. I never sat down with him after that. I mean, we met a few times all those years. We met a couple of times and had a meal together, but we never shared our hearts with each other. There was always something between us. There was always something in me that needed my father, and it wasn't there. So that night, something changed. And something changed inside of me. Because I asked my father to forgive me. I was able to step out of the boat that night and let all of those years of anger go. Not just anger, trauma, hurt, regret, shame. All kinds of demons were afflicting me. All kinds of emotional distress. It was like it was just a weight was lifted off of me that night. Then my sister took me home. And I got a call 2 weeks later that my father passed away. It took 4 months from the time I met my father that night in October to February for God to do a work inside of me. So in February of 2020, I got up from where I was. I still couldn't walk. I had to walk on crutches, canes. I was shaking. I was really bad. But I told God, I said, if you will provide a way and make a way for me, I will get up from where I'm at, and I will leave this place, and I'll start a new life and serve you. And I won't look back. Next day, a knock came on the door. And somebody came to the place where I was, and they brought just what I needed to get up and move, and they said that God told them to come there. And my life from that time on has been changed. I don't have the days right now for you to tell you, but they took me to an Amish farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, to a place that I was very familiar with. And I stayed at the back of the farm in an RV for 8 weeks. And I think I didn't sleep much the first week because I was wrestling with a lot of inward struggles and a lot of demons. But I fell on my face, and I remember for day after day crying out to God in repentance. Now, friends, repentance is not, I'm sorry. Repentance is much, much more than that. It's saying I'm here, but I want to change, and I can't do it. I need you. And God began to teach me and to change me and to create in me something that was missing. He came down, his spirit fell upon me, and the demons had to leave. The Parkinson's that I struggled with was gone. For years, in this hand right here, I couldn't raise it above this mark. And I began right away to lift my arm up and praise God. Everything that was wrong with me was fixed, physically speaking. That was a miracle, but the greatest miracle was that God saw me. The Bible tells us that if there's 99 there and he realizes that one's missing, he'll leave the 99 and go bring the other one back to him. He did that for me. And not only that, my childhood sweetheart, God was working in her life. And after many things that happened in my life, God told me, everything that was taken away from you, I'm going to give back to you. Tenfold. I'd have never believed it. But the day came where I got on an airplane and went back to the country where I grew up at. And I went there, and Sarah was waiting on me. Today, we've been married for a couple of years now. We love the Lord. He's brought her out from where she was and changed her life. And he's changed my life. He's put joy inside of me, filled me with the presence of his kingdom and his power. I share with you this small part of my testimony only to encourage you that no matter where you're at, no matter where you've been, no matter what you think you have done, God is able. No matter how bad you think it was, God is able. No matter what church house you went to, God is able. Forgiveness is real. A relationship is not something we talk about. It's something that is between us. Just like I stand here next to Sarah and I can put my arm around her and she can put her arm around me, Jesus does the same thing, and it's real. It's not just words. He's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. When everything else falls apart, he'll never leave you. And when there's those inner struggles and you're struggling with them and you say, I just don't know what to do. I don't want to do this, but I'm going in this way. I love Jesus. I know he's present. What can I do? If you knock, he'll answer. If you seek, you will find. Cry out to him because deliverance is waiting for you. You are his next miracle. He loves you and he will not let you go. My name is Andrew, and this is Sarah. We love the Lord, and if you do, you're my brother and sister. If you don't, please don't leave without seeing me. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that.
It was telling me, climb out of the boat. take a walk on the way. Some places you'll never go till you step out on faith. Don't fear the wind or the rain. Jesus called you, now go. Others might think you're insane. Just climb out of the boat.